Hey, what's up? It's Bon, and today I want to talk about PlayStation. Specifically, I want to get into maybe a little bit, not a rant, but maybe a chit chat about their lineup in 2024 and how it's reminding me a lot of Xbox's 2022 lineup. Let's get into it. Okay, so let me preface this entire video with I am a Xbox preferrer. But I've really made efforts, especially as I've gotten older, to not do the console war thing. All of the platforms have their strengths. It's basically undeniable to not acknowledge PlayStation's dominance in the game industry, especially the console market, specifically in a quote unquote PlayStation versus Xbox comparison, at least in the PS4 and PS5 era, even in the 360 era, where Microsoft did kind of have the lead or kind of kick PlayStation's butt for a while. By the end of that gen, it had evened up quite a bit. So I've had a lot of conversations and a lot of chats during podcasts and things like that about how I do believe all the major platforms are kind of going their own directions with what their goals are and with what they're trying to do in the industry. But even with all of that said, they are still competing. Like, there's no getting around that they are directly competing with each other. And the main way you compete is with games. And, we're leaving Nintendo out of this conversation because they're really doing their own thing. And this year is probably going to be a big year for them, especially if they release that new console. But with PlayStation and Xbox, we have a unique situation. We have two consoles that have released next-gen consoles within the last few years. I think you could argue that neither one of the consoles have really brought it when it comes to feeling like these machines have like really taken gaming to the next level. But you could at least give some credit to PlayStation and giving experiences like Ratchet and Clank, like the Horizon games, and even Spider-Man 2 that, while much of that game didn't feel super next gen, I think, there's various elements of that game where, they're obviously taking a big step forward. On the Xbox side, you do have games like Forza Motorsport and some others doing that, but it's definitely leaned in Sony's favor because this gen, they've put out a bunch of good games. And that's hard to beat. They also happen to have really good hardware. They've really hit it out of the park with this controller that, even though it may not have the best battery life and maybe it's got some of its own issues, it did things new where Xbox played it safe. And I think that's kind of the story of this whole gen so far. Xbox played it pretty safe, put out a bunch of like good games, with a few, extremely good ones in the mix, especially depending on your personal opinion. But up to this point, we really saw that Sony seems like they were able to time things out where COVID delays kind of turned into this situation where for like a couple years they put out a bunch of really good games early in this generation. Then in 2023, their only big first party game was Spider-Man 2. And then in 2024, right now, we have no announced, or as far as I know, even rumored big first party PlayStation game. We have some really big third party games. We have Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. That's obviously a third party, Square Enix making that, but it's exclusive to PlayStation and it won't even be on PC, at least for a while. There's other games like Helldivers 2, Pacific Drive. In this list I found, it lists Microsoft Flight Simulator. I don't know why that's listed as an exclusive for Sony. It isn't. But it's odd. There were a lot of people hoping that the Wolverine game was going to be the big 2024 pull for them. And after all the leaks and everything, we now know that that's probably 2025 at the earliest. Naughty Dog just canceled their big project that was supposed to come out this year, the big multiplayer Last of Us game. The Last of Us 3 or whatever they're working on is probably 5 or 6 years away, but maybe not that far, but I'm sure it's pretty far off at this point. Santa Monica with God of War, they just put out a great DLC for Ragnarok. but there's no indication they're putting out a game this year. This isn't meant to be some like, oh no, Sony's dead. They aren't. They'll probably still sell more consoles this year than Xbox, and they'll do just fine when it comes to games, especially with their third-party help and multi-platform games, which are very popular on their hardware, because their hardware is very popular and has likely sold maybe around twice as much as the Xbox consoles, both of them. What I do think this is an opportunity for is Microsoft. The simple fact is like I said before, games matter. And I think what we may see, if Microsoft, for once in a really long time, plays its cards right and really just gets lucky, if they can put out a handful of really solid games this year and they put them on Game Pass, there will be at least some people who will say, hey, I like PlayStation. Maybe I have one already. I'm not really into buying a PC. Man, some of those, the Hellblade 2, that's looking pretty good. That Indiana Jones game, or any other ones that get announced for this year, and what is likely to be a showcase very soon, probably for all of the platforms. You may see, and I think Microsoft has an opportunity this year, if they can put out some bangers, to claw back some of the mind share and some of the market. It's not going to be a flip. It's not like Xbox is suddenly going to sell more consoles and things like that. I don't think that's going to happen. But I do think they can claw back, or at least push back, some of the momentum that Sony has had, because, they're getting clobbered right now. And that's not because Xbox isn't giving good offerings. Game Pass is amazing. The Series X is especially good. Even the Series S in certain use cases is great. It's a really great deal. We do have the possibility of Sony announcing and potentially releasing a slightly faster and pro version of their console this year, where there's no expectation for Xbox to do that. And then there's even rumors that Xbox may put out one of their games on a competing platform. It would probably be on Switch, especially a new Switch, and it looks like it may be something like Sea of Thieves, even though the initial rumor was Hi-Fi Rush. So, what's the point of all of this? I don't know. I just kind of wanted to talk, and you're listening to me if you're still here, so I appreciate that. I just think that there's a really good chance that the same kind of feel we had about Xbox in 2022, where they put out nothing. The whole Halo Infinite was still kind of struggling out the gate. Starfield got delayed, and then when it came out, depending on your outlook on that situation, well, I enjoyed that game. Mini didn't feel like it was kind of living up to what people were expecting, and 2022 was rough for Xbox. They had a ton of great third-party games. They had Day One, A Plague Tale Requiem, which ended up being my game of the year, and a bunch of other great games you could play, but they weren't just there. And if you were already buying a PlayStation to play, God of War or The Last of Us 2 or whatever, Horizon, Forbidden West, it wasn't that hard of a decision for a lot of people, obviously, with the numbers that have been sold. So I am predicting, as I have been actually for quite a while, almost a year, I think, that this year may end up being a pretty slow year for PlayStation 5 after a relatively slow 2023, but it won't matter because they sold a ton of consoles in 2023. They'll do it again this year, especially if they have the hype of a PlayStation 5 Pro, especially if that comes along with a PlayStation 5 price drop and a Pro being reasonably priced. They'll sell tons of both of those. But I do hope it would be really cool, I think, if a Switch 2 came out and kind of got the conversation really focused on it, and if Xbox can finally have a year where most people can look at it and be like, yeah, Xbox had a great year this year, maybe the best. Obviously you aren't going to turn over the console warriors, but I think a lot of people, including myself, at the end of the day, just really want Xbox to compete more, because I think they do some things, whether it's Game Pass or putting their games out day and day on PC, that are really good for the market. And I think that, some questionable things that Sony has done in the past and presently some, arguably anti-consumer moves and so on, would be harder for them to do, and they would be more pressed to do things that may be more friendly to everyone, to the whole industry, if they have someone breathing down their neck, because they really don't right now. So more than anything, I just want all of the big platforms to be doing extremely well and to be accomplishing their goals, because I don't want to see any of them go anywhere. And I want them to push each other to be better. Even if they are going different directions, they are still competing. And a healthy game industry requires multiple players who are doing extremely well. And that's what I hope we can achieve this year. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. If you like this video, if you like conversations about games and game reviews and stuff like that, I have a review coming very soon for a game that's coming out very soon. So please subscribe to the channel to get that. Leave your comments down below with what you think. Like the video if you did. Become a channel member if you want to support this channel and everything I do. You can also check out my podcasts that are on here, and you can check out all of my links in the Linktree link down in the description below. That's all I have for this one, so until next time.